All right, so let's dive into something that's been kind of a hot topic lately. It seems like everywhere you look these days, people are debating whether or not international students are to blame for Australia's, crazy high rents. You've probably seen the headlines and the online arguments and all that. And it's easy to get caught up in the finger pointing and the blame game. But we're going to try to take a step back from all that. We're going to look at some actual data and see if those claims about international students, really hold up.
Yeah, and the data we're looking at today comes from a research article that was published in Higher Education. It's titled Scapegoating International Students for the Rental Crisis, Insights from Large-Scale Evidence, 2017-2024 in Australia. And the researchers really did their homework on this one. I mean, they analyzed 7 years' worth of data from some pretty reliable sources like the Australian Bureau of Statistics and various government departments. They compared trends at the national level and at the capital city level. And they even took into account the impact of COVID.
Wow, 7 years of data. That's a pretty comprehensive study. So what did they find after all that number crunching? Did the research back up what those headlines have been saying?
We're prepared to be surprised because on a national level, they found that rents sometimes actually drop when the number of international students increases.
Wait, hold on, rents go down. And that's not what I was expecting at all. It seems like the complete opposite of what you always hear.
Right. And it gets even more interesting. The study directly challenges that claim that international students are like the main cause, or even a significant contributor to the housing crisis. Basically, their analysis just doesn't support that narrative.
So if the data is saying international students aren't the rental villains everyone's making them out to be, why are so many people convinced that they are? I mean, is it just easier to point the finger at a group that's, maybe more visible or easier to stereotype?
Well, yeah, it's definitely a complex issue. And a lot of times perception doesn't really line up with reality. You might see a lot of students in certain areas, especially around universities,
Yeah.
You're struggling to find affordable housing. And it's easy to assume there's a connection there.
Right.
But you have to remember, correlation doesn't equal causation.
Yeah, just because two things happen at the same time doesn't mean one caused the other. Yeah, it's like that classic example with the ice cream sales and the shark attacks. Both go up in the summer, but it doesn't mean one causes the other.
Exactly. There are always other factors at play. And in the case of Australia's rental crisis, this research suggests maybe we need to look beyond international students and consider the bigger picture.
Okay, so what would that look like? What are some of those bigger picture issues that might be contributing to the rental crisis?
Well, there are a bunch of things to consider, like the shortage of affordable housing,
Right.
stagnant wage growth, and just overall population growth. All of those things are putting pressure on the rental market.
So basically, if there just aren't enough affordable places to live, then any increase in demand, whether it's from students or families or, young professionals, it's going to push prices up.
Exactly. It's a classic supply and demand issue.
Right. It seems like this study is kind of a wake-up call for policymakers. Like, they can't just keep blaming students and ignoring these bigger systemic issues.
Yeah, I mean, the researchers actually recommend sending this research directly to key government ministers, the ones in charge of housing education, even home affairs.
Wow, that's pretty bold.
Yeah, it is. But it also highlights how urgent the situation is.
It's like they're saying, hey, look at the data. It's time to make decisions based on evidence, not just on convenient narratives.
Exactly. Because blaming students doesn't just oversimplify a complex issue. It can actually have some pretty negative consequences, too.
Yeah, I can imagine it probably creates a lot of unnecessary tension and makes it harder for international students to feel welcome and integrated into the community.
Definitely. It can fuel discrimination, prejudice, hostility,
Yeah.
Towards students who are already trying to navigate a new culture and a new environment.
Right.
And it's important to remember, international students, they contribute a lot to Australia's economy and society.
For sure.
So, we want to create an environment that's inclusive and supportive, not one that unfairly scapegoats them for complex problems.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that sometimes the simplest explanation isn't always the most accurate one, and that data can be a really powerful tool for, challenging assumptions and pushing for better solutions.
For sure. And speaking of solutions, if we really want to tackle this rental crisis head on, we need to address those underlying systemic issues that we were talking about.
Right, like the shortage of affordable housing and things like that.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Increasing the supply of affordable housing, supporting wage growth, maybe even rethinking our approach to population growth. All of those things could be part of the solution.
It sounds like this research is really urging us to think bigger and bolder, not just about housing policy, but about how we create a more equitable and sustainable future for everyone in Australia, international students included.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who wants to delve a little deeper into this topic, I definitely recommend checking out the full research article. It's called Scapegoating International Students for the Rental Crisis: Insights from Large-Scale Evidence, 2017-2024 in Australia. And it's published in Higher Education. You can find it online.
So the next time you hear someone complaining about international students driving up rents, you can hit them with some hard data and maybe spark a more nuanced conversation.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that we all have a role to play in challenging misconceptions and advocating for solutions that are actually based on evidence.
Well, that was a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for joining us and helping us unpack this really complex issue. We encourage you to keep exploring this topic and forming your own informed opinions.
And maybe challenge a few assumptions along the way.
Until next time, stay curious.